Hello, and welcome to Organization and Design Structure. I will be your presenter. I'm Patricia Miller, and I'm a member of the LEAD 313 class at Greenville College. What's the first thought that comes to mind when you hear the Salvation Army? I'm guessing it's a bell ringer, the red kettles at Christmas time. Maybe you're thinking of a thrift store, but you might be surprised to know that the Salvation Army has been around for 131 years and provides basic social services across the globe. In order to acquire a thorough history of the Salvation Army, I made the best use of my resources and talked with Major Kelly Collins, who's the Divisional Commander of Heartland Division here in Peoria, Illinois. What I learned from Major Collins was that the Salvation Army is divided into 4 territories across the United States, and these territories are divided into 40 divisions across the country. I've provided administrative support to the program secretary for the past 18 months here in the Heartland Division. The Heartland Division consists of 26 locations. Major Kelly Collins also shared with me that the national branding promise of the Salvation Army is doing the most good. Doing the most good for the most people in the most need. Major Collins also shared with me that doing the most good serves as a twofold purpose for its employees by offering greater sense of purpose in the work and by offering training and mentoring. I'm using this presentation to illustrate current organization and design structures of DHQ and to determine levels of efficiency in these areas based on the material presented in Griffin and Moorhead. The principle of division of labor is analogous with work specialization. Simply stated, each job and work should be assigned to the person who has the highest level of expertise in order to promote efficiency. This slide shows the areas in which DHQ is efficient and which areas DHQ is inefficient. I would still say, though, even though they're more heavily weighted on the inefficiency side, that the work specialization is about 50-50 division based on the number of officers to employees. But the efficiency at DHQ could improve if by implementing more of Weber's ideal bureaucracy principle of distinct division of labor. Let's take a look at departmentalization. We know from Griffin and Moorhead that departmentalization is the way in which divided tasks are allocated to work groups. As you see here, there are 5 groupings most used in organizational design. The tasks at DHQ are divided by a combination of business function and process, and secondly, divided by product services. While all the officers are at the same level from an organization chart view, currently the business and process segments are headed up by the male officers, while the product or service aspects fall under the purview of the female counterparts who happen to be the spouses. In other words, DHQ operates on a mixed departmentalization scheme. In our next slide, we're going to look at chain of command. Each officer at DHQ is head of a particular group, therefore, the principle of chain of command is evident. According to Weber's ideal bureaucracy, the chain of command should be clearly established in order to maintain your hierarchy and your formalized procedures. Fayol's principle of unity of command calls for employees on a 1-to-1 ratio for improved direction and 1 supervisor for common tasks. The employees at DHQ do enjoy discipline, stability, and order in the workplace as a result of the established hierarchy. However, as stated in Griffin and Moorhead in reference to Weber's view of authority, this model impedes creativity and innovation among individuals within the organization when it comes to improving efficiency of tasks. Let's take a look at the org chart next. Here's the org chart for Heartland Division. Major Collins would be this gray box, and as you can see, all the officers are at the same level. As I mentioned, the certain excuse me, certain areas and officers have more direct reports and others have fewer. So we will move on to the span of control, which is the number of people reporting to a manager and defining the size of the work groups. As with the mixed departmentalization scheme, the span of control at DHQ also varies. The span of control across the business function, which would be these with the larger reports, have a large span of control. And then the two areas for divisional secretary of program and divisional secretary of women's ministry each have a small span of control, 1-to-1, each only having a direct report in the form of their administrative assistant. The span of control with my officer and myself, the 1-to-1, works really well as we work with the officers at each of the 26 corps to help determine ways in which their business side can run more efficiently. For the responsibilities that are assigned to my officer, the small span of control, the 1-to-1 ratio, is appropriate and works quite well. Next, let's take a look at decision making. The degree to which lower-level employees within an organization are empowered to make decisions is either centralized, where the decision-making is at the top level with little employee participation, or it is decentralized, and that is where there's extensive employee participation in making decisions. Overall, I'd say the degree of decentralization at DHQ is extremely low, due in part to the military model of hierarchy established within the Salvation Army. I believe that it's probably a difficult aspect for many of the officers to grasp that employees could participate in decision making because most of our officers have grown up in the Army culture for generations. From the employee standpoint, the inability to participate in decision-making of how to do your own job can be frustrating, and at times it seems that volunteers even enjoy more freedom than employees when it comes to deciding how to best execute the duties in their areas which they're serving. However, taking a step back and realizing that the Salvation Army does rely heavily on its volunteers, perhaps allowing the greater amount of decentralization at the volunteer level is appropriate for the Salvation Army. Taking a look at formalization, we are reminded that the degree to which the rules and processes and procedures prescribe employees' job activities can either be explicit or implicit. The formalization is to predict and control how employees behave on the job. The Salvation Army might be lacking or is lacking in the area of centralization, but it excels with its highly developed level of formalization. The Salvation Army is very good in written out job descriptions, manuals, and office memos as forms of communication, but implicitly we do enjoy some things that have become a part of our culture over time. We do enjoy regular weekly devotions. We do have flexible lunch hours, and as I mentioned with the volunteers, we are urged to volunteer for any things that are going on within our division that we are interested in. So now we are at our final stage, which is the organization culture. The organization culture refers to the set of shared values, often taken for granted, and that help people within the organization understand which actions are considered acceptable and which are unacceptable. And these are often communicated through stories and other symbolic means. The more formal manner in which the Salvation Army shares its cultural values would be through the formal orientation that for our new employees and also our employee handbook. Secondly, we are learning about the shared values through the testimonies of our officers. Many of them are very heartfelt and these are instrumental in leading the officers to join the Salvation Army. The implicit part of the values and beliefs that is taken for granted is back to our brand, our national brand, which is doing the most good to the most people in the most need. As we wrap up here, it would be my standpoint that at the organization level, the current structure works well for the Salvation Army and for the officers. Considering the material presented in Griffin and Moorhead, I would say that there could be a little more efficiency for employees if, as we showed in the slide of work specialization, some of those aspects could be adopted. However, as Major Collins also shared with me, the branding promise to do the most good must become the culture throughout the entire organization. And the true design of the Salvation Army, outside of what happens within a division, within a headquarters, is doing the most good. And at the end of the day, there is really no reward equal to that of doing the most good to the most people in the most need. Therefore, overall, regardless of what was in our text, the Salvation Army Divisional Headquarters in the Heartland Division is doing the most good for its employees and for the people that need it the most. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.